Welcome back to another episode of Utility Room Legends, where we explore everything that moves and controls water and spotlight the people who are building, managing, and shaping the infrastructure we rely on every day. Before we get into this week's conversation, quick reminder, episodes release every other Thursday and are available on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And we invite you to like and subscribe if you feel so inclined. You can also check us out online at utilityroomlegends.com for full episodes, updates, and a place to get in touch if you'd like to be featured. I would also like to thank Sky Jacob, our producer, for all of her hard work in putting this together. And if you're watching on YouTube, we hope you enjoy the ambiance provided by our most recent studio upgrades and visual quality, which we have Sky to thank for that. Our guest today may not have turned wrenches or worked in the trenches, well, at least not the ones you might be thinking of, but his current past leadership roles directly affect how systems are funded, managed, and maintained. Today, we're joined by Mike Coffman, the current mayor of the city of Aurora, Colorado, and someone with one of the most extensive public service careers of anyone I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, and anyone we've had on this show. Mayor Coffman's path spans decades in public office, including 5 terms in the United States House of Representatives, Secretary of the State of Colorado, Colorado State Treasurer, and multiple terms in the Colorado State Legislature. And long before his political career, Mike served as a United States soldier in the Army and Marine Corps officer, including both the Gulf War and Iraq War. Those experiences continue to shape his approach to public service and crisis leadership. In this episode, we dive into some of the most pressing water-related challenges facing growing municipalities like the city of Aurora, from supply security and infrastructure investment to affordability, conservation, and long-term planning. We talk about the balance between growth and sustainability, regional cooperation across water districts and city borders, the critical role of public trust and transparency, and how local government can take proactive steps, especially when federal or state solutions fall short. Mike also opens up about his hands-on leadership style, including how now a well-known decision to temporarily live in a homeless shelter to better understand the crisis firsthand, something we discuss in the context of empathy, governance, and how leaders stay grounded. This conversation is a reminder that water doesn't move without leadership, not just in the field, but in the policy rooms, the budget meetings, and yes, even the ballot boxes. And that is why we're honored to have Mayor Mike Coffman on Utility Room Legends. Let's get into it. I appreciate you, sir, coming on, and was happily surprised to get your acceptance of coming on to join our podcast.
You were vetted by our communications team first.
Well, I'm sure I was, yeah. Well, let's start. I would like to introduce you because you probably have what would be the longest introductory title that I've yet to have here. So I would like to first introduce you in your current role, which I appreciate you for, as mayor of the city of Aurora, Colorado. And then also can't forget the next best is is Marine. I wouldn't say former because we don't say former Marine.
No, we never do.
And Army veteran as well. And former United States Congressman, former Secretary of State of Colorado. Did I miss anything, sir?
A former state treasurer, former state legislator, House and Senate.
Oh, just a couple little minor. Well, I appreciate you very much for coming on. It's an honor to meet you. And I do want to say that I do remember I voted for you in the first term. I would have voted for you in the second term, but I was in Florida at the time. But I remember the brochure and leaflets coming with the picture of you in Iraq in the first Gulf War, I believe. So I was like, wow, I'm going to vote for the Marine, right?
All right, Semper Fi.
Hoorah. Happy early 250th birthday party coming up here, 250 years. Are you doing anything for that?
Well, I'm going to go to, unfortunately, I did get invited to be a guest, honored guest at our Marine Corps Ball, but I am going to, there's a Marine Corps luncheon downtown at the Denver Athletic Club every year, and so I do go to that.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Is that going to be on the birthday?
It's usually, I think it's like the Friday closest.
Okay.
I think it's
Right
the Friday closest to the birthday.
Yeah. You don't want to do it the morning after the ball.
No.
You can even find your Marines. So yeah, and I was telling you this morning. I came from working. I work a lot with water system operators, and I actually would be doing a great disservice if I failed to mention how phenomenal the Aurora Water staff is. And I've been working. This has been 13 years for me. I had no intention of ever being in this business. I don't even know how people get into this industry. It just kind of came up, but I'm very passionate about it. If you would have asked me 13 years ago, where water came from, I would have told you the faucet.
Yeah.
And I think that's how most people look at water. But they forget when you see from the lens that I've had, or from the experience I've had over the last 13 years, how much goes into bringing safe, clean drinking water to the home. I tell those system operators that their job is just as, if not more important than first responders, because how many days before civilization breaks down and we're shooting people for gallons of water at Walmart,
Sure.
if that water's shut off. And so it's a very thankless job that most people don't look at those operators. They'll see them maybe driving by, and they'll see the trucks out when they got to repair a brake or something like that. But no, Aurora Water is a fantastic organization. Brian Van Winkle is the director of, and I know I'm going to forget some people, Morena Lurch over there, Mike Frazier, Mike Miller. The team there, you have a very, very outstanding group, and I think overall, I would say one of, if not the best, water purveyors in the state. So hats off to those guys for that.
Well, thank you. I work mostly with the director, Marshall Brown, who's just an extraordinary leader and very passionate about what he does. In fact, we're going to be going down, I think, on October 4th, either the 3rd or 4th. Either the 3rd or the 4th. We're going down to down to Rocky Ford, down to the Arkansas Valley to look at some of our programs down there and how we work with agriculture.
Yeah, I've heard. So this is pulling water from the Arkansas River, or diverting this program. I'm pretty familiar with it. I know that Board of Bureau of Reclamation is I think they've been out doing assessments on that for quite a while. Can you explain kind of what that project is?
Well, I think what I'm going to be going down there for, quite frankly, is, and what I'm trying to promote in the city of Aurora and working with the water department, is is in terms of acquiring water rights. Mm-hmm. I think you're more on the infrastructure side. I'm a little less into that as a mayor. But how
you just get the briefings?
Yeah. How can we acquire? Where that's important is how we set our rates.
Sure.
In terms of what we call tap fees, mm-hmm. and people complain about that all the time and saying, how can you be for affordable housing when you're charging these tap fees that are, for, whether it's an apartment complex, any kind of structure.
Sure.
That they tend to be pretty high. Well, that's reflective of the infrastructure cost. That's reflective of the water acquisition cost. And so, but I think that, when I think about our big initiatives, one is, the fact is that it's amazing that we're trying to get us down below. When we started on this process of, say, conservation and recycling water and doing things like that, we were about 50% of our water use was outdoor irrigation.
Yeah.
And 50% was, interior type use. And so, that's kind of outrageous when you think what watering, what is it? What they call cool. Let's see.
Green
cool
belts,
turf,
yeah.
Kentucky bluegrass, things like that that require a lot of water in a really an arid environment, and so we're on the water conservation side. We're probably And then, so let me talk about water conservation.
Yes, please.
And then
Yeah.
let's talk about the acquisition side.
Sure.
On top of that, so on the in the middle, we'll squeeze in some recycling, and so on the conservation side, well, first of all, let me just say our policy is not to use groundwater. That it's really in terms of development.
Mm-hmm.
If you say, and the reason is because it's really the recharge rate is so slow that it really could be seen as a non-renewable resource, and so we don't want to be reliant upon that. So, you know, we get our water from it's all basically stream water. You know, it's renewable water supplies, and so we recycle. Everything goes down the drain, is recycled and effectively put back to where we found it.
Mm-hmm.
Better than when we found it, and then we have a water right to be able to draw that to extinction, to draw that out, draw that amount out again that we put back to extinction. So I think, but on the conservation side, I mean, on new development, we don't allow any of this cool weather turf in the front yard,
Yeah.
in the side yards, on medians, no new water features. You're limited in the backyard to, I think, 500 square feet or 45%, whatever's less. So we're really trying to discourage that type of vegetation. So in commercial properties, basically you have to demonstrate that that it's functional. If you're going to have like that sort of cool weather trip, it has to be fun. In other words, it's a sports field or it's
Sure.
a picnic area,
Yeah.
something that has heavy use.
Parks and Rec golf course.
Parks and Rec
yeah.
golf course, that it has heavy use. We don't see having any more golf courses. I think that.
I think we got enough there.
You're talking about.
Although I don't think you can ever have enough golf courses.
In the summer, you're talking about
Yeah.
a million
Sure.
gallons a day.
Yeah.
Usage. So it's so I think, and we're into incentivizing existing properties to convert, and then we're very interested in converting our own properties that we have as a city. So I think conservation is a big deal for us, and I think we're really the leaders in it in Colorado. I think Castle Rock is replicated some of the things that we do. We're also looking at what kind of users that we want.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
we don't want bottling. I think we have one bottler, and I won't mention their name. But we don't want them to expand. We don't want any more. That's a pretty.
Is that up in the DIA area?
Oh, I'm not going to say.
Yeah.
Now that one, that's actually on the Denver. So Denver.
That's a very interesting
is better,
spot up there.
Denver's a little bit better positioned than we are. I mean,
Yeah.
because they're older, and they have more senior water rights, and so they'll take bottlers there. They'll take Pepsi. They'll take Coke and things like that. We won't.
Yeah. But Denver Water is also very unique and different. Denver Water is not, so Denver Water is a private entity, and it is for profit. And whereas Aurora, everything is
Well, I think
public.
what is smart about Denver, what they did, is the governance.
Yeah.
That it is not the city council, and it's really the mayor does have appointments, and they have to be staggered to where no one mayor, I think, controls the board.
Yeah.
But they're really very independent,
Yes, they are.
and they make decisions just what is in the best interest of the city and county of Denver. And they serve a lot of other suburbs, but without really going into all the political drama.
Which I know there's a lot.
Because if they did, let me tell you, Denver Water would be a fraction of what it is today in terms of.
Well,
its
I mean,
delivery.
they provide. So I want to say it's about 100 and something districts. They supply them water. Some of them
They
do
do.
full service. They do the meter reading, and others. They're a great group too as well. And some of, one of the things that they did is they've really taken the lead, and they did it years ago on lead service line identification and mitigation. And
We're
they
involved
didn't
in that
wait.
now.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
involved in that now. We have a replacement program
Yeah.
that individual citizens can apply for and have their properties inspected. And I'm trying to remember what the date is that property. I think it's properties that were kind of 1960s and older.
That's where Aurora's looking. So the
Yeah.
EPA had a deadline in
Yeah.
October, which I don't believe anyone was going to hit of the total inventory assessments. They're supposed to supply how many lines,
Yeah.
service lines, and it's been an ongoing thing. That was that I believe was supposed to be in October. It might have been extended to October this year. That's the lead service identification
Right.
program, and Aurora's been on in front of that. We've actually, like I said, some of the names I mentioned, we sat down and just tried to figure out what their pains
Right.
were in helping to identify, what I think they're, a lot of people are looking at galvanized. I think that's more of a bigger issue for Aurora than it is the lead.
No, I remember in Congress, the Flint, Michigan thing was when I was in Congress. What a nightmare that was. But I think they bought it upon themselves, a lot of it. But terrible situation. So, we know that lead's such a problem, particularly for young people, particularly for people that are, children, in terms of how it affects their growth and development. So we're obviously very interested in making that transition and helping people out to make that transition.
Yeah, and some of the challenges so Aurora is unique in the fact that Denver water's built out. Yeah, I mean there's limited, but pretty much the system's there now. It's rehab and improvement, and Aurora has to do both.
No,
and
it's
when
a
you look
big
at the
challenge.
growth-
It's a big challenge for us because we have land mass that's a little larger than Denver,
Yeah,
and a third of it's not developed. And it's tough, when we look at development, that's kind of tough to say, okay, you're out here, but we don't have the infrastructure to reach you right now.
Yeah.
And so, to try to move that forward, but we are somewhat limited. If somebody is a landowner and they're not contiguous to an existing line, then that's tough. So
well, that's where
sometimes
you get your tap fees.
it gets a
I mean,
tap
that's
and
the- it's
sometimes
not-
they'll pay.
it's not cheap.
Sometimes that developer is going to pay for it.
Yeah, the
whole-
developer.
and then we'll reimburse them as the other owners develop onto that system.
Correct.
So we do that. I think that very exciting. What we're gonna, 90% of water use is agricultural in this state, and so we are trying to work a lot better with agriculture in terms of not doing the buy and dry stuff and doing the purchasing the water right,
Yeah.
but then upgrading their irrigation systems and then leasing back enough water for them to maintain production, and then we'll export the difference to our city. I mean, that's not available in every situation, but
Yeah.
we're going to try to really expand that capability where possible.
Yeah, and that's the challenge that you guys have, as well as not only having to address that expansion in land and territory, but it's also population. I mean,
Right.
my dad was in the Air Force. He taught at the Air Force Academy. That's how we came out to Colorado. And then when my dad got out of the Air Force, we moved to Parker, and we were there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then we moved into over in Aurora. It's near Southlands.
Okay.
It's like Tuscany, and
Sure.
we moved over to that area. And I went to high school at Eagle Crest.
Okay.
So I'm from Aurora since '94, and when you look at how much growth, there was no E470 out there. There was, it was just nothing but farmland once you hit Piccadilly.
Right.
And so Aurora Water's challenge is you're doing the same challenges as a Denver Water, but yet you also have growth in population, and then you have expansion in land mass.
It's very tough,
Yeah.
and I think that's why because if we want growth, we have to lead in conservation.
Yeah.
And we have to lead in doing things like recycling.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason why we are trying to bring down that percentage of outdoor irrigation, because we can't capture it like we can capture what goes down the drain, and so it's really problematic. So we're really doing our best. I think there was a lot of grumbling from home builders for a while, but there's no way we can continue that. And we've always had a philosophy that growth has to pay its own way. So we want.
In business, we call that ROI.
Yeah, ROI. That's reflective in those
course.
tap fees.
Those systems have to pay for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's not, and that's one thing too is when you look at, if you see out there a crew from Aurora Water working on a main break, right, or doing something like tapping, and they're having to drop a backhoe.
Right.
When you drop a backhoe, you're in it. That's $7,000.
Right.
So a tap fee of whatever that amount is, that's all reflected in that. But it costs $7,000 to excavate, and then you're putting somebody then you're putting somebody in a trench. So there's a reason why it costs what it does if you want your water. Yeah.
We do a lot of bond financing.
Yeah.
In our water department.
Yeah.
It actually has a separate bond financing group. We finance more there than any other department in this. All the other departments in the city combined.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the challenges there, and they like I said, they do kudos to them. They do a phenomenal job. And then the other thing too that I think a lot of people don't realize is you have, for a water utility for a city, your biggest expense is going to be people. And then the second one for water, most people just think it's there, it's flowing. Well, it's being pumped in a lot of cases, so power. And I know I don't know if you're familiar with. There's an initiative that was head up. I want to say Mike. I know Mike Frazier was heavily involved, and I'm sure it was up from there, where they were capturing the energy. So when you reduce pressure. What water flows as gravity does, and so every foot you increase the pressure. That's how you design the system. So you have a hydraulic grade line, and then from there you manage your zones, and you may have to reduce that pressure. And so you have these underground vaults that have valves that will reduce the pressure from something that may do some damage into a residential system into something that's more manageable. Well, when you reduce that pressure, that energy is basically lost. But it's there. It's just like when you used to do the old physics, about your, captured energy, kinetic potential energy. If you feel a valve that, even though the water is 60 degrees or whatever, that valve can be hot if you have a high differential. Sure. That's power. And so Aurora Water was the first that I know of, because I saw, and the story went in there, and we were somewhat involved in with this company called NPRV, or In-Pipe Energy. And they went in, and basically what they did is almost the reverse of a pump, so like a turbine, or a turbine where they would capture that energy from that pressure reduction. And so if you have an area where you have a high amount of flow rate, and then that drop in pressure is pretty constant, that is an ideal spot to where you can capture that energy and actually put that back in the system. And I'm not sure if you were ever familiar, but it's a really cool, clean, renewable energy source that I think, I was hoping that when I saw that story come out, that a lot of other districts would look at that, because I think it's really cool. You can go back and put that in, because it costs money to move that water, right? It just doesn't move itself. So I don't. Have you heard of that before? That project?
No, I really haven't.
Yeah, it's out by Gun. It's out on Gun Club.
Okay.
Near the base, like Gun Club and Jewel. It's really cool.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, you guys were in the news for that one. It's interesting, and I something that's close to my heart, and I always wondered why I get so passionate about things, and it kind of led to me thinking, going back to what we were talking about, our military background. And veteran suicide rates and things like that. not to get too far off topic, but I think this may fall into some of the things that Aurora has going on with like a homeless problem. And, being a veteran, looking at those suicide rates and what that might be. Well, as I'm doing this, my wife's like, you have to make everything about, life or death. And I kind of sat there and thought about it. And in a way, she's right. It's kind of like why I feel like just as a child, even growing up in the military, I was kind of, my dad never said you're going to join the military. It was just, you have this, I just felt like I was going to serve. And then when you're in the military, as you know, there's nothing like that camaraderie, right? And I think what happens is when you're with your unit, when you're out, if you're deployed, especially if you do get deployed, and a lot of these guys that have the suicide problems are they had been deployed, they were with their units. It's hard to find. You have to have that sense of why, that sense of purpose. And so I get up. So I spent some years in the car business. That's what I was doing when I was a reservist. Before I started doing this, I was actually running car dealerships.
Wow.
And I used to even make it about that. I would tell the sales guys, "You're driving American Steel," and it's like it's always got to be passionate. And I realized most people that join the military, they have that kind of sense. It's really hard for somebody who's been in the military. Now you're out. You were deployed. You get back. You decide to get out. Now you're a UPS truck driver. So if I don't deliver the package, nobody dies. Right. And so there's kind of a sense of that, hey, the guy next to me relies on me to do my job, or my job's this important. And I think that's where a lot of veteran suicide, homelessness comes into play is in not having that team unit camaraderie and that sense that the man next to me relies on me to do my job. And I don't know if I know Aurora, I would think homelessness, we see it where I live, which is I live off of.
Okay.
And so there, I see the camps, that are outside of Cherry Creek or sometimes just inside the fence and the issue they deal with there. Is there, what kind of initiatives is Aurora?
Sure.
Yeah.
A really big initiative that we will have a new, we call it Aurora Homeless Navigation Resource Center. And we have, in the Biden administration, they had these one-time, payments to states and municipalities called the American Recovery Plan Act, which I think fed inflation, quite frankly. But so these were one-time monies that were supposed to stimulate the economy that was already being stimulated when they came out. But we used our dollars and used some of Arapahoe. We're in 3 counties as a city: Arapahoe County, Douglas County, Adams County. And along with some of the state dollars, and we purchased the Crown Plaza Hotel and Conference Center, a mid-sized conference center, at Chambers and I-70.
Yeah, that's where we used to have our state water conference.
Oh yeah, and so we're converting that to basically I'm going to call it a homeless shelter, if you will, but it's really different. Is
this going to work better than the one that Denver did over by Stapleton?
Denver is just a disaster. Sorry, Mike Johnson. But it's so their philosophy is called housing first, and it's a dominant philosophy in the country. And it says housing is so basic to the human condition that if you just solve that, not by giving somebody a shelter, congregate shelter, putting them there, but by they have to have their own room or own apartment. If you give them that, and then provide services around them, but don't have anything requirements on them, that once their housing needs are met, they'll stabilize and they'll take advantage of the services. I think part of the problem is it's based on I think a flawed analysis that says that unsheltered homelessness is predominantly due to housing affordability.
It's bullshit.
It might have been at one point. But really, it's a crisis of addiction and mental health.
Mental health is a huge.
And if you do drugs along, some people, they have mental problems. and they resort to drugs, or some people resort to drugs and use them for a long time and have mental health problems. But whatever, that's the problem. So we're going to have a three-tiered program in this concept, and the first tier is going to be and this is fairly good, and we've agreed by virtue of taking these dollars.
Is this something that's new, like that's in progress right now?
We're renovating. We're finishing the renovations now. It will open up by the end of November. On November 6th, the White House is pretty excited about the program because it's different.
Yeah.
Right. And so the Secretary of, I think Scott Turner, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, is coming out on November 6th to take a look at the program, and that's kind of our soft opening. But we probably won't be fully operational until after that, till the end of the month. And so it'll have these three tiers. The first tier is a congregate shelter, cots, very minimal services, but the goal is to try and get them into the second tier. And the second tier is better living conditions, semi-private accommodations instead of the cots on, in a large open area. And so but to be there, you have to participate in addiction recovery and mental health and job training or some combination thereof. Then the third tier is the 255 rooms that were in the hotel that would be available for individuals. But to be in the third tier, you have to be working, and then you have to pay a third of your income back to the program. So you're working, still need of services. It's basically transitional housing. And so so think about the difference. You got two major cities side by side. City of Aurora says you get a room, you can have a room, but you got to be working.
Yep.
In Denver, you don't have to do anything.
No,
you
they
just
give
go
it to
straight
you,
from the street into a room. And so I think it's a failed, expensive failure. And so I think it's going to be successful. It's really incentive based.
Yeah, I think it's great.
And so I'm really excited about the program. And so it'll have a lot of capacity for us to move people off the street into this thing. It does us no good to leave people on the street.
No.
They're just hurting themselves. Yeah. And they're, unfortunately, it's not as our chief of police says, it's not a crime to be homeless, but homeless people unfortunately commit crimes of shoplifting, starting fires, and things like that, particularly in the wintertime. So I'm very excited about this, and I think the whole country is going to be watching.
When is this looking at opening up?
By the end of November. This year.
Okay.
This year.
Wow, I think that's a phenomenal program.
Yeah, so it's going to be very exciting to see. But the goal is to get people to work.
Well, if giving somebody a house, like if the problem with homelessness is they can't afford a home, then I guess a third of America is on the verge of, and that's not the issue. The issue is clearly it's mental health, it's drug addiction. It blows my mind that, and this is like since the 90s. I mean, I remember growing up when it was, the American dream to get a house. And this is what we've kind of done this to ourselves a little bit when you talk about the affordability. And part of the problem, so my son's 18, he's works in our warehouse. And it was cool because this year he graduated from high school. So, you forget that look that he's got, when like, I'm going to go take on the world. And my wife was, he was a 4.0 student at Smoky Hill, and he's not in college, and but he saves, I think he puts 75% of every check into savings.
That's incredible.
He bought his own car cash when he was 17.
Wow.
And he says it's, because even if you get a scholarship, it's not paying for everything. So he's like, it's not just the money, it's time. So, I don't want to go to college to party. Like a lot of his friends, their parents are pulling out loans, and and it's like you're paying, you're mortgaging, taking a second on your home so your kid can go party, right? I mean, they want to get that college experience. And, then what happens is, so go to college, you get out, right? Now you can buy a house. Like this is like the old, how I kind of grew up. Then, the problem too is it's like, even my son was telling me, well, Dad, like, no, it's everything. It's the affordability. It's part of that, but it's also part of what we've conditioned ourselves to believe we need. A young starting family doesn't need a 3 or 4 bedroom home.
No.
I grew up in military housing. My dad didn't buy his first home until he was in his, mid 30s.
Yeah.
And now these kids, they want it now. They
Yeah.
want it now. And, but addressing the homeless problem, I
Right.
think that to say that it's because of it's not affordable. It's because what we've basically done is ignored the most vulnerable parts of our society.
Sure.
And the reason I say this is my wife, struggles with mental health, and she works really, really hard. She's a paraeducator in the school district, and she works really, really hard to make sure she's medicated, treatment, and I think that's probably a big majority. One thing I was going to ask in that program, would you have, I think veterans assistance programs too within there? Because I think quite a bit of those, you're going to find a lot of them might be veterans.
I think veterans, unless they have like a banned conduct discharge or something like that,
Yeah.
they're the easiest population to work with. I mean, if they're willing to, because the fact that there's so many, you can tap into so many services at the VA, and so it's really linking them up to those services. And so I'm very excited about the program, but that it's. For us in Aurora on the street. So it's different when we have somebody who's homeless because they're couch surfing or something like that, staying with friends temporarily. There are people that they lose their jobs and they were living paycheck to paycheck before that. But they're pretty easy to help because they want to go to work. They want their apartment back, to have an apartment back.
Yeah.
They want those things. But I think that we have to convince. I mean, the bizarre thing about this is you look at the people on the street and you think it's got to be a hard life. But the majority don't want to change. And so that's the hard. We have to convince them to come off the street.
It has to come up from
and to
themselves,
go in there. Yeah. But I mean, and of course, we're, quite frankly, we're tough. We've got a pretty tough camping ban right now that we're enforcing. And so that's an incentive for them to say, okay, there's not a choice. I don't really have a choice to stay on the street. And then I'm going to have to moving all the time, losing my stuff in these these cleanups, these abatements of these encampments. So why don't I go over here, to this place? And so I was talking to a person that was previously homeless recently, a female, and saying, okay, I know these congregate shelters are not popular among people in homeless, and tell me why. Tell me what it would take to get somebody to go to one.
Yeah.
She said, it's got to be clean. It's got to be safe. I said, okay, that's my mission. I got to make sure this place is clean and safe, that people off the street want to come.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what you were talking about with what Denver did. And I remember it was kind of hilarious because we had a manufacturer that came, I wouldn't say hilarious, funny, ironic. The hotel that they had, I believe, was there was like a Renaissance. Then there was one that was a
We got a bunch of them.
yeah. Well, one of our we have these manufacturers that we represent, and they'll have people that'll come into town and visit us. And so it was right off of Quebec and I-70.
Oh, yeah.
And so one of them used to stay there. And what's funny is, out of habit, he just drove there. He kind of came out last minute, didn't book anything, so he just had him drive him to the place. Yeah, and he walked in there. He said, when I saw the place, I thought, wow, they're doing some construction or something. And
Wow.
and then the cameras there. Walked in, they had security there, and then but even the Denver Police Department wouldn't even go in there anymore.
Wow.
Denver PD got to the point where they wouldn't even walk in there.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about this program, and I think it's going to be a success, and I'm going to stay on top of it to
That's
make sure
great.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great stuff. So and I'm glad we did, because I do think it's important, and being a resident of Aurora, I appreciate it. I think that's it'll be interesting to see how that goes. So you said the White House is watching.
Yeah, the White House is watching, because the national policy right now still, although the White House is is trying to change it, but the national policy is essentially that Housing First is the only recognized program in the country. So in other words, the operating costs for a lot of my program, I have to raise privately.
Yeah.
Whereas Mike Johnson doesn't.
Right.
And so I have foundations that are supporting this program, the Andrews Foundation, Daniels Fund, and things like that, because of the unique nature of the program, because it's different. And so they want to see, they are hoping that it's going to be successful as well.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I hope it's a success. Like I think it could be something that hopefully, because that's looking at how do we address that, and to your credit, looking at something outside the box, and that's something that I think I like to do a lot is think of how we can solve a problem that
Right.
doesn't just throw money at it and create an ancillary problem, which I think is what you would do is you would just give people a home. They're just going to continue. It's not the environment, it's
Yeah.
the behavior and the pattern.
Yeah, and I went and looked at programs across the country.
Yeah. Did you model this off of something that was
It's
out?
closest to Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Kind of the three tiers incentive. They don't have the luxury of having the rooms that we have.
Right.
So there, it's kind of more like from the first tier to the second tier, and the third tier is it kind of they partner with the group home type things as transitional housing
Okay,
for
yeah.
people, as opposed to our. I love it that we have like one campus, and we can have. Our partners there. One of the programs that we're going to have, we're going to take some of the rooms and use them for respite care, working with some hospitals, because when somebody, people, it's a rough life being in unsheltered homelessness, and so that, let's say that person, becomes ill or injured, they wound up in the emergency room because they don't have any, certainly don't have a primary care physician or anything, so for their basic health care, they wind up in an emergency room, and if they have to stay, if it's surgery or whatever, and they have to stay in the hospital for a while, they'll unfortunately, they'll be the hospital under federal regulations will be required to keep the person longer than a housed person, because of the fact that if they put them out and there's nowhere to recover.
Yeah, right,
And so we'll provide that for them. They're going to have to staff those rooms. They're going to have to equip those rooms, and they're going to have to provide primary care services for our other folks in the program. And so it'll be a kind of a win-win situation. So we're looking forward to some of that.
Is the local news done anything? This is the first I've heard of it, which I think
No,
is great,
I think we're negotiating right now with UC Health on the Andrews Medical Campus, and we're going to be talking to the Aurora. I think it's called Aurora South Medical Center over on Potomac in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking to some of these what they call federally qualified. I think it's federally qualified health centers.
But the media, this hasn't been anything
No,
that the media has
no.
been. Well, I guess so.
No, because we haven't finalized any of the deals yet.
Okay.
When we do,
That's
because,
great.
Part of the negotiation is to say, okay, you'll have these rooms, staff equipped, but what services will you provide for the rest of the population in exchange for that?
Yeah. Oh, that's
So we'll do
great.
something there. We want to have as many services on site as possible. We don't want people leaving
Sure.
to go out and we're not going to be pushing people out in the day. We want to be good partners with the businesses around there.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's important. So at first, I think some of the businesses in that area were concerned.
Sure.
Quite frankly, it borders on Denver. But it's because this is about 40th and Chambers.
Yeah.
And so then, when we told them what
And there's
we're
a
all
Buffalo.
about,
There's a Buffalo Ted's. It's like right close.
yeah, just a little bit down, east of that.
So we don't even go to Buffalo Ted's for Delmonico ribeyes.
Yeah. So they're just east, but they're on 40th.
Yeah. 40th Circle. Yeah.
Just a little east. And so I think it's our, but we're talking to them. We said, okay, this is going to be a very secure facility. We're going to fence, but we're going to have a nice looking fence around it. We're going to have security on site. We're not going to push people out in the day like other shelters do, where they just hang out.
Well, that's
in that
part of the
area.
problem with when you look at it, and I didn't realize this. This is something I've been married to my wife now for 24 years, and I had never really been had that much involvement in mental health and the things that I've learned over the years. one of the things is the hospitalization. See, so I didn't even you have 72 hours. You have a
Yeah.
72-hour hold. So if somebody goes, police come, somebody threatens suicide, they take them to to an emergency room, then they go on a 72-hour hold. After that, it requires so much. I didn't, talking to, some of the mental health providers and caretakers is after 72 hours, like you have to let them go unless a doctor does what they now call certifies it or
Yeah.
says that. But when you do that, a lot of doctors aren't willing to do that because you're going through a process that's taking away somebody's constitutional right.
No, the bar is very high
The bar is high
for that, and we have
yes.
a tremendous deficit in this state that is so large to the extent that the state is actually under a consent decree by the federal government for a lack of inpatient mental health beds in this state, and so it's really that's really a difficult situation where we don't have enough.
Yeah.
And so it's a very difficult situation that this state has, and a challenge certainly for us.
Yeah.
There is going to be a facility that we will work with that should be operational this fall.
Okay.
And it's the former, I think it was the Ridgeview Academy, which was in the vicinity. You can't see it from the road intentionally, but it would be east on Quincy on the north side from Gun Club Road.
Okay. Yeah.
It's kind of hilly,
Yeah.
so you can't see it.
That's out by. That's pretty close to the new water facility. The building.
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
It is.
So by the res.
And it's close to the reservoir, close to the dog track and the Arapahoe County Fairgrounds.
Nothing like putting some addicts near a dog track.
So that will So that will actually be. It was for young males who had some kind of altercation with the law.
Sure.
Very minimal security. That was a 500-bed facility for adolescent males with basically a school there.
Yeah.
So classrooms, food service, vocational training, gym, everything. And so, but Governor Polis decided he did not want to use it for that purpose, and so it was closed down. And then it's supposed to reopen this fall for people with really severe drug addictions.
Okay.
If a long-term program, could be up to 2 years program. Wow. And but when it was 500-bed facility, it was 2 bunk beds to a room without a door. So
these people wouldn't want to be in boot camp with me.
It's going to be right now it's going to be 125, but I think they can take it higher as they convert the classrooms. They don't need the classroom space to all the classroom space to residential. So, but that'd be important. That'd be important for us, for people that are just beyond our capacity to deal with, to refer over to that program.
No, I think that's exciting news, and I'm really excited to see how that plays out because I think we need. It's a big problem in this country, and hopefully, City of Aurora can be a model for other municipalities to.
Well, fentanyl is our big problem right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of crystal methamphetamine, meth, morphing into, fentanyl. Some people do both, but incredibly cheap drugs, incredibly cheap, incredibly powerful, incredibly addictive.
Yeah,
and deadly.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, I know whenever driving back, you see someone, you wonder that's somebody's kid, somebody's mother. In a lot of cases,
Yeah.
So it's really tragic. So I think that's great. Now, kind of moving back towards some of the, as far as for water infrastructure, what are kind of some of the biggest challenges you see? So, you have the EPA, the funds, the federal funds. So you had your infrastructure funding bill that was put out, and Aurora's, definitely and as everyone should, it was the biggest infrastructure spending bill that's, ever been put out. And it follows with a lot of red tape as far as what those products are going to be, and then what the funding and the requirements and how those cities or municipalities apply for it. What are some of the, and I know Aurora, I think, is slated somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't want to speak, I know each year annually it's somewhere around 1.5 million in federal funds, which is needed for infrastructure improvement. What do you see the future in some of those, where those allocation of those funds going?
Well, unfortunately, I think they're gonna probably go to more roads and bridges right now.
Well, this is actually straightforward
For water projects.
Yeah.
Well, I can't give you a number. That I mean, we do get some help from what we call congressionally directed.
Yeah.
But that's separate from what you're talking about. But I don't have the number off the top of my head.
Yeah.
In terms of, it's just, I think our big challenge is extending that infrastructure out to new areas.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I didn't realize till I got into this is, nationally, if you had to take a guess at how many gallons of drinking water is lost every single day in this country, what would you take a guess at?
Oh no, it's a massive amount.
So it's
But anyway, I mean, that's part of our is how can we work with, because again 90% of the use in Colorado is agriculture. So how can we work with our agricultural partners to make them more efficient, to allow us to utilize some of their water?
Well, and to my point, one of the side parts of that is that you have existing infrastructure that's aging.
Right.
And that's where you were talking about tapping fees and people not liking those tapping fees. It's like, hey, this is like, we have to, you can't just put a system in and leave it. And I think a lot of time for water, a lot of times people look at it like, you can't install a road or pave a road out in 1970 and then not touch it and expect that road to still be fine. And that's kind of where we're at. Like most of the underground systems, on a national average, they're between 30 and 50 years old.
Well, particularly in Northwest Aurora, the oldest part of the city.
Yeah, and so, and Aurora actually does a really good job. So you have what they call non-bill revenue loss. So this is water that's lost from the source to the point of use. And Aurora sits, estimated somewhere in that 10%, which is right where the the standard wants you to be at. But as we move forward, so nationally we're losing 6 billion gallons of clean drinking water a day, and most of that is lost through leaking pipe joints and aging infrastructure. So it's not only looking at how do we grow that system, how do we look at conserving the water, but then how do we go back, because then we run into a math problem where that infrastructure continues to age. So how do we go back in and put those funds into a
I think our biggest challenge right now in the city of Aurora is probably former military installations. It's the Anschutz Medical Campus, which was formerly Fitzsimmons Army Medical Center, where we're growing that now. It's got 3 major hospitals.
Make them pay for it.
And so that has some old infrastructure that needs to be replaced there, and then it's going to be a real problem. The city of Aurora, well, the Army closed in 1996, and so now we really want to create a very urban campus that with the clinical side, the 3 major regional hospitals, and the academic side. Right now we have 4,500 students, and we're going to grow the residential too, which would be fairly high density. And the infrastructure is not going to support the existing, particularly water infrastructure is not going to support that. So that's going to be a major cost. We're going to be looking at Laurie Air Force Base. The Eastern Inn is actually in the city of Aurora. Yeah. And
I remember playing Little League football or baseball games there when I was at the academy.
So that closed in 1994.
Yeah.
And the United States Air Force gave it to the Colorado Community College system. And we have 116 acres there on the eastern side of the former base, and the Colorado Community College system. They repurposed a few buildings. They boarded up most of the buildings, and they didn't build a single building in the 30 years, and now they've had it for 31 years, but 30 years it was deed restricted for higher education or for vocational training. That deed restriction has passed. I've gone to the governor, and he's helped me put pressure on the community college system to basically, we want to redevelop that area. Want them to sell it. We want to redevelop it. And so that, I think.
Well, they got a beer league ice hockey arena there now.
Well, that's on the Denver side. That's on the Denver side. I guess if we put one on the eastern side, right? But on the Aurora side, it's a real problem. So we're going to have some real big infrastructure, I think, challenges, particularly on water in that area.
Yeah, and it's coming, for me being still, and this is how just overwhelming, when you start getting into what's the underground utility. And like I said, I think it's because it's out of sight, out of mind. You put a road in the 70s but the road is visible. You're driving on it every day. You're drinking the water, but you don't see everything that's there. And even to what you were talking about with Flint, I mean, part of the problem there is that when you change things up and you make that water has an interesting way of, or the pipes where they'll kind of almost encapsulate themselves with that natural calcification process, and so where that lead is almost kind of contained, to say the word. Right. And then as you start stirring up, you start making changes, or you increase the flow rates and the demand, the velocity, you start stirring up and kicking up that flow. That's when you start running into problems, and that's why you have, like you'll see, the hydrant flushing. Right. The notification that they're doing hydrant flushing, and that water sometimes will come out brown because you're kicking up that laminar flow. In that, I think, as moving forward, when you have that aging pipe and that aging infrastructure, replacing that it's a math problem. It's like you're going to continue every single day that pipe's aging, all that stuff's aging, and you have to go back in and replace that. Yeah. And most cities are looking at a target of 1%, 2%. And that's where a big challenge is for the.
I think that's going to be a huge challenge for us, both those former installations. Probably another big challenge for us will be the Colfax corridor, particularly between Peoria and Yosemite, the Denver side, because we are really trying to move forward with redeveloping that. I believe it should be, because it's on a transit corridor, bus transit corridor. I believe it should be. It's a dominant retail now. Well, it's a lot of buildings boarded up, marginally used. When I was a kid growing up in Aurora, that was the business district for the city. But what we
where'd you go to high school? I didn't realize.
I went to back when I went to school. It was 10th grade started high school, so I went to Hinckley my sophomore year, and Central my junior year, and managed to do poorly at both. I wasn't focused, and I enlisted in the United States Army after my junior year of high school and finished.
So you didn't graduate from high school?
I did. Well, I did. I finished through an Army program.
Yeah,
Army being an acronym for ain't ready for the Marines yet.
So see, let that be a lesson to everyone listening.
Yeah,
it doesn't. No, it's and what's kind of ironic about that is I went to Eaglecrest, and I cared about football and girls.
Oh, there we go.
And so I didn't have. I wanted to be a pilot. That's what I wanted to be. And it was funny when I realized my junior year or sophomore year, like my dad even told me, like, you're okay. Look at your grades. You're not going to happen. So I had to get a 4.0, and I only for the end of my junior year and my senior year just to graduate.
Wow.
And I thought I was dumb, and I took the ASVAB. And I walked in, took the ASVAB, and I'll never forget. I tell the story as I walked in that recruiting station. I was going to enlist in the Air Force because I thought, okay, maybe I can go to the prep school because I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Like, I grew up watching Top Gun, and you grew up watching Maverick and all that. And I mean, I grew up on the military base when they used to play Red Dawn on matinees for the kids, And so I went in to the recruiting station to join the Air Force, and there was a sign out that said "Out for lunch." And so I turned to walk out, and this Marine comes out, dressed blues, everything. He looks at me and goes, "You don't want to do that." And I looked at him, and he was like, "You're a Marine. Come here." And I was like,
"Yeah."
And and I did, and that was when I realized that I
Wow.
actually was smart. Like it was
Yeah.
because, then I found out I had ADD. I was
Okay.
I was already diagnosed as that.
Right.
But disclosure now for the Marine Corps, because I guess we're past the statute of limitations, is
Right.
when they go in to tell you. So the recruiter tells me, "Have you ever been on Ritalin, like
No,
these
no.
drugs?" And I said, and I went, "Yeah, yeah." And he goes, and so he's like, "Okay, hold on, time out.
Oh,
If
yeah,
you've been on
yeah.
Ritalin, you can't be in the Marine Corps." And if you
Okay.
and I said, so "Have you ever been on Ritalin?" I said, "Nope." And he was like, "Okay."
There we go. Good.
But what's crazy is
Yeah.
after we're and talking about mental health, because
Yeah.
ADD is a
Sure.
classified as a mental health disorder.
Yeah.
Is that when then later on I never take anything. I excelled in the Marine Corps, but I was the person that in high school I could ace all my tests, but I wasn't going to do homework. It wasn't
Right.
interesting.
Right.
And then when I did my ASVAB, I scored in the high percent, and they told me I could do Intel. So I was like, that sounds cool.
Wow.
Went to school, did that, and then later on, I kind of hit this plateau in my work where I was like, I'm working, I'm doing all this stuff, but not really accomplishing anything. I just kind of felt, and my doctor was like, well, maybe you should, you might be ADD. And that's when I was like, well, I was kind of diagnosed with it when I was a kid. And when I met with the psychologist, it was, I'm like, I don't get it. Like, why do I need medication when I was in the Marine Corps?
Right.
I didn't. And they're like, well, the only two ways you can deal with ADD is you have to have every minute of your day planned out and regimented, or
Okay.
you need medication.
Okay.
So either life in the Marine Corps,
There
or
we go.
yeah,
No, I was they talked me into going to so my father was a career soldier, so I was a soldier first, and they talked me into in the company first sergeant talked me into going to a program like half days for so long to go to like but it was like a military school, but it was for people that didn't have a high school diploma. And it wasn't like if you didn't show up for class, it was you were the Marine Army term was absent without leave.
Yeah,
Marine
yeah.
Corps term was
Unauthorized absence.
And then, and my God, if you didn't turn in your homework, you could face disciplinary action under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So it's very different. So I did well, not by choice.
So you enlisted in the Army at 17,
Right.
and what was your MOS then at that point?
I was supposed to be in administration, but I wound up in 11 Bravo. Long story.
That's
But,
my brother's 11.
Well,
brother.
infantry.
Yeah.
But I was mechanized infantry, and I was in Europe, and it was interesting. And with First Armored Division.
Yeah.
And then got out, was in the Army Reserve in college, and then really
Where'd you go to
didn't-
college?
University of Colorado, and then really didn't want to. I really made a great choice in going to the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps is just so different than the Army.
It is.
And in the Marine Corps, people are just proud of being Marines, and a lot of the training's uniform. No matter what you do,
Yeah.
you go through the same training, and so there's such a warrior culture. Whereas in the Army, it's worse than even when I was in. It was bad when I was in. Well, now they have two basic combat trainings for, people that are in combat arms and people in non-combat arms. The Marine Corps, everybody goes through the same stuff. And people in the Army, you never see somebody say, I'm proud to be a soldier. It's always, I'm proud to be an airborne ranger, or I'm
Yeah.
proud to be this, or I'm proud to be that. They just never, and in Marine Corps, it's always,
A Marine.
just a Marine,
Marine.
period. And you never qualify it with something
That's
else.
something that I noticed actually when I was younger. I noticed that I remember listening to because my grandfather was a full bird colonel in the Army. So when he would and what's funny because people would look at him because they was what did you do? And he was like, oh, I was in the Army Corps of Engineers. And you could immediately see there was a different way that they would look at him because he was an engineer, right? Which, and it's like in the Marine Corps, it's like our favorite people are devil docs, the doctors, and the CBs. Like we
Yeah.
love those guys, right?
Yeah.
Like they build the stuff.
Sure.
And that's when I first noticed everyone was like, they would say their unit,
Yeah.
and the Marines, I noticed when I was a kid, I would go to we'd be on base. And so, you'd have vets from, and it was one of the highlights. It was so, it was such a blessing to be able to have talked to. And I remember as a kid, my dad would point out, so I'd see a hat. And I remember I was at the doctor's office at the Air Force Academy. And so you would have the veterans that were, retired and from World War II that were living in the Springs, and they would go in because they were on their health care.
Sure.
And I remember my dad, though, he would point out and he would go, that guy was in Patton's Third Army.
Oh, wow.
And so I walked as a kid. And so early on, I got to speak to people. And,
Wow.
and this is back in the 80s, so it's not, and unfortunately, that's one of the biggest tragedies is losing that greatest generation. But I remember as a kid having conversations. I remember speaking with a guy who had the USS Arizona hat on,
Wow.
and I walked over and I said, "Were you on the Arizona?" And I was only like 10 at the time, and getting to hear those stories, that was
Wow.
something that
Impressive.
definitely left an impression. That's probably where I got
Wow.
that service,
Sure.
So, but yeah, I mean, I once again, I know I don't want to disrespect your time because I know we
Sure.
talked about an hour on here, and I really appreciate you coming on. I guess in closing, one thing I wanted to ask as far as anything you see in the future. What are I guess actually one thing I'd like to ask is how do we get people to understand and appreciate water, what it takes. Most of the time, in Aurora, Xcel Energy comes in and they tell you that they're coming out with this new meter and it's going to go on this whole test program and you're in this area, and the rates seem to raise constantly, but for some reason with water.
I think
You raise 2 cents and you got people with pitchforks out.
They are, but let me tell you one thing I tell the staff there is that whatever you do, obviously you charge what the rate is. It's what we call an enterprise fund. So, we're not padding anything, but do rate changes every year.
Yeah.
If there's a rate change, don't go just because it takes too much work. Don't go years and then
Correct.
do some big jump. You'll be meted with a bunch of pitchforks. So
you should be changing, especially at least every rate that the power does, because you're pumping the water.
I think we do. There's a information program, but I was thinking about the other day. So we send, with the water bill every month, we send out a newsletter that talks about lots going on. But then you figure if somebody lives in an apartment complex, if somebody lives in let's say a townhome or a condo homeowners association, where the association pays the bill, they may not be getting that. And so that's a concern. I think everybody ought to know what we're doing, but we do certainly get some resistance. It's not a uniformed, if somebody uses the way it's kind of, I hate to see the term progressive, but progressive in the sense that the more you use for a residential user, that the higher the incremental cost for that, to discourage people, to encourage conservation, to discourage people who have massive lawns and things like that they feel like they got to water.
Oh man, you should go to California.
And encourage conversion. Yeah. And we even have a program where for free we will send somebody out and develop a plan for you to convert your yard.
Yeah.
And we will provide, and there are some incentive payments to assist in that. So that's ongoing, I think. But too many people take it for granted. I think our water tastes great, and it's
Aurora water is actually
tastes great.
Great water.
And I think and our rates are really reasonable relative to other areas. I think Denver Water is actually Denver Water. I think charges more for their users outside of Denver.
Yeah, well, then they have tiered systems.
No, but
I
think ours
they could be higher.
Ours are competitive relative to other utilities.
We don't want to go the burning route. Go free water for all, free water. Yeah. So, but no, it's funny because it's like when people talk like healthcare's are right, water's are right, blah blah. Well, yeah, but somebody's out there busting their butt, putting it there for you.
It's amazing, crazy. And I mean,
it's a right. Go get it.
I've learned so much about it, and the fact is that, the other countries I've been to, outside the United States, most countries in the world, you can't drink out of the tap. You can't drink
Correct.
water out of the tap.
Yeah, you wouldn't
But
want to.
but in Aurora, you can. In most of the United States, you can.
In pretty much
without
every
problem.
city in Colorado,
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have, in Denver, water is great water.
Yeah.
You know, no, we're blessed, and you know that's why I kind of get my both my parents are from California, but I love how like there was a rain harvesting deal that
Yeah.
was a kind of a big deal for Colorado. Actually, I'm hoping maybe sometime, because I don't want to go past our time, but I'd like to get you on again, because there's so many things that I could ask about. Even with I just popped up with the backflow devices and the plumbers union coming in, and that was a big deal. But
I think Sterling
yeah.
Ranch is a big. They're doing some real experimentation with rainwater capture.
See, it used to be
It's-
that you couldn't do that
It's very complicated. See, because of water rights. I mean,
because California's already bought it.
Yeah,
and so that's
right.
yeah,
California's already-
and so because everything on that side of the divide. So I tell
Yeah.
people, if you're ever across the other side of the Eisenhower Tunnel, just go ahead and pee in the
Yeah.
Eagle River, the Colorado River, so it
Yeah.
goes all the way to California. That's just my
Well, the lower basin states, it's tough.
yeah. It's and you put it it's like
Colorado River,
Las
yeah.
Vegas just cracks me up. You put a
Yeah.
freaking casino and an oasis in the middle of
Right.
like somewhere where God made it so nobody should live there. And then you put golf courses and casinos
Right.
and water.
They're starting to be on the residential side. They're
Here's
starting
the
to be
crazy
aggressive,
is the crazy thing is they have totally. If anyone wants to look at water conservation, look at what Las Vegas has done. And
Yeah.
I will say Las Vegas water is done a phenomenal job where that was going to be. I remember when I was a kid, they were saying Lake Powell, Lake Mead's going to dry up.
Yeah.
And and then they've. Las Vegas will be out of water in 2 years, and
Yeah.
they've managed to really turn that around with those.
They've done
initiatives.
some pretty
Yeah.
aggressive
Yeah.
conservation measures on the residential side
Yeah.
that we've been watching.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time, and
thank
I
you.
thank you for coming. It was
Very
an
kind.
honor. It was a privilege. I hope we didn't have to get into any of your book there. And,
No, I'm fine.
but would you be open to coming out again here and doing this sometime?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Very kind. Semper
Yeah.
Fi.
Semper Fi. Hoorah.